daughter.
And I'm Eden, and I'm also a preacher's daughter.
And this is Gay Girls, Good God.
Christian content from a queer perspective.
And I am so thrilled to announce we have our very first guest on the show ever.
We do? Would you like to introduce us?
This is Miss Benadryl Tweety Wasco. Mm-hmm. And she is a little distressed, I think, this evening.
I see.
And so she wants to be doing this.
So Benadryl, what do you think about that?
Yes.
No comment at this time.
No comment at this time.
For anyone who's not watching, Benadryl is one of your two cats.
Mm-hmm. Benadryl, yes. Benadryl is her government name. Mm-hmm. She goes by Benny. And I also have Jet. So I have Benny and Jet because I was gay. And in 2019 when Rocket Man came out, I was like obsessed.
You were gay. Thank God. Thank the
saved.
Lord you have been
Yes.
saved. You've moved on from your homosexual impulses and you can control yourself now.
I can. Yeah.
Me, on the other hand, as soon as I see titties, no.
I remember Rocket Man was like one of the first movies that had like a full-fledged like just gay sex scene in it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't watch that several times.
Take me to the party.
Mama, hot, sexy, glitter everywhere. Love it.
Yeah, we love. Oh, her tail slapped the microphone.
Oh, Benadryl, bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us today, Benny.
Thank you.
You want to show you the door? Go on. Get out of here. Benadryl, everyone.
Hold for applause. So, Rocket Man, you love Elton John. I love Elton John. Mm-hmm. But our outfits are a little bit of an allusion to some different musicians, are they not?
Yes,
okay.
They are. I don't know if you know of a little band called Boy Genius.
Just some indie, like,
There's no way that there's a crossover with our audience of Boy Genius fans.
So, as annoying gay white women, we are
absolutely
the Boy Genius base.
Yes, exactly. That is because today's we'll be talking about one of the members of Boy Genius, Julian Baker, her sophomore album, Turn Out the Lights, and sort of how it pertains to deconstruction in a sense.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm excited. I'll be totally honest. I remember listening to this album like 2 years ago, I think, but I haven't really listened to it since. And when you told me that you were going to be doing an episode on this, I have intentionally avoided it so that I can be kind of fresh to hear all of your perspectives on it. But before we get into actually talking about this album of deconstruction, I have to ask you.
Yes.
Sister Kale, who are you praying for?
Oh, Sister Eden. It is going to be a cold winter, as we said in another episode. And we are starting to feel the effects of that. And I want to send out a prayer to all of my fellow stoners who now have to go through extra steps before they go outside to sit and smoke.
You being like, I would like to give a prayer to all of my fellow stoners.
I was going out to smoke earlier, right before this podcast.
You smoke right before the podcast. I drink right before the podcast. Hence, Manic Pixie Dream Girl, Butch Lesbian.
Yes. Which is
reversed.
I was like, which is this? Also, can we occasionally do a Manic Pixie Dream Girl, Butch Lesbian of the day?
I would love that. Do you want to start now?
Yes, okay. I would like to say that this week's Butch Lesbian Manic Pixie Dream Girl is going to be Bindala Creme and Jinx Monsoon.
Explain.
Jinx Monsoon is going to have to be our Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Absolutely.
And Bindala Creme is going to be our Butch Lesbian.
Absolutely. I can see that also in their artistic impulses.
Yes.
And that the way that when they work together, they kind of focus each other. That's like in CJ the X's video about the dialectics of Rick and Morty. Stay with me.
One of the sacred texts.
One of the sacred texts. One of the ancient tomes. Shout out CJ the X. One of my favorite videos of all time. They talk about how Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, have like totally opposite artistic impulses, and that one is very like strict and atomizing and like works in these ways to create these exact plots, whereas the other one is very loose and all over the place and improvisational, and that together they create a very creative and fun yet well-structured like creation. I think Jinx and Bindala Creme do a similar thing.
Yes. Oh, yes, because Bindala like is the director, producer, writer of all of the shows they do, and Jinx is just like, okay, I'm here.
I'm here. It slays every time. Oh my god, I love that.
Yes.
And I am also praying for you stoners. I am so sorry. It is getting cold outside. Baby, it's cold.
Remember whenever there was that whole debacle over that song?
Girl.
And then, who was it? John Legend and Meghan Trainor?
Yes.
Did they do the new version?
I think so. The woke version. The woke liberal left.
I remember Facebook was so intense.
Girl, why is Facebook
that
not
year.
intense?
I go on Facebook because, like, I have created an echo chamber for myself on Instagram.
As you should.
And I really don't see a lot of conservative shit unless it's, like, you know, a shit post making fun of it.
Yeah.
And so when I go on Facebook and I see all of these people that are on my Facebook from where I grew, from my hometown and from the church that I used to go to, I'm like, oh
my God.
And a trip to the Facebook comments,
girl,
will remind you how hateful people are.
Okay, let me say this. Instagram Reels, I am talking to you. The comments on Instagram Reels are insane. This is like 2016 YouTube comments level type shit. People are out of their minds. Love y'all though. Don't come for us, please.
Yeah, and like Facebook is the same way, except they're like 40 and up. Exactly.
Whereas Instagram, it's Gen Z and sometimes even scarily Gen Alpha. I, Sister Kale, however, am praying for anyone who is currently working for an hourly wage. I think this is like the third time in a row that my heart has gone out to anyone working, different types of workers. Right. But girls, it's getting bad.
I'm enjoying this season of being that unemployed friend on a Tuesday afternoon. It won't be like this forever, but I'm enjoying the season of it.
And that's why you should savor it while it lasts. And also, we all live vicariously through you.
Exactly.
So when you're like, well, today I looked at pictures of butterflies.
Yeah, and today I made a set of coasters that look like burgers when you stack them all together.
And we all get to go, oh, I love that. And it's so powerful.
Look, I spent 7 hours sewing this strawberry.
So important. I think that the cost of living is getting so high and the economy is getting so bad, and yet, you know, salary jobs are bad enough as it is, but hourly wage workers, no one's getting any raises. So it's just getting bad out there. So my heart goes out to y'all. If you want to rob your place of employment, no, I'm kidding. But we're kidding. We cannot condone any type of violence or thievery, chaos, confusion, madness, and shenanigans, as Alyssa Edwards once said. We're still watching Drag Race, by the way.
I don't know, like, that is, for some, it is just bringing me comfort, and it is sparking my creativity.
Yes. You just finished season 9, yes?
I did.
One of the things that we've been talking about lately is how in season 9, Sasha Velour, whenever someone stops to talk about something traumatic, Sasha just stops doing her makeup and goes... She always has that same wing. She always has the same wing, but nothing else. So she's just trying to give her full attention. So she someone's saying like, well, when I was 7 and I had an eating disorder because my dad used to shoot me out of a cannon. She's going, yeah.
Also, I once said that if I was in Drag Race, I would react the way, like, depending on which trauma response I had, because I do think that would put me into fight or flight.
Oh yes. Yes.
I would either be Binda LaCreme or Nina Bobina Brown.
Yes.
And you would be Sasha Velour for sure.
What makes you say that?
Because one of the things that I love about you is, like, whenever, especially when you're in a group setting, whenever someone like is wanting to like have a conversation about something, but they don't quite have the words or the knowledge or history, you're like, well, actually, but I love that. And but I feel like everyone, like, I always get something from that. And every time Sasha would like speak, she was like the queer history, like, oh yeah.
I love that. The BPD part of me is like, someone's telling me something about myself. Write that down. Write that down.
That time that we took, one time we took the entire Expansive Universe character test for each other. Girl. Yeah. That is exactly what I want.
Exactly.
I want everyone to take that test for me so I can know exactly how you see me.
The test that's like, what character from all media are you? We took that, but then we were like, wait, what if we took that for each other?
And they were very similar. And I will say, all the top 4 of my characters died.
But as I explained, a lot of the characters that were in your top 4 died because they were specifically very lovable and kind and pure characters that were killed off for the drama of the story.
They like me. They really like me.
So, Kale,
Hi.
without further ado, would you mind telling me a little bit about one Mrs. Julian Baker? Mm-hmm. Does Julian Baker use she, her pronouns?
I believe so, yes. It's either she,
Okay,
her, or
no.
she, they. So
Okay.
I usually, and I know that it's like not okay in every setting, but usually I err on the side of caution and like will interchange.
Yeah. That's like, if you don't know someone's pronouns, they, them is a great thing to default to.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking to a trans woman or talking about a trans woman and you only use they, them,
Yeah.
we know what you're doing. We know what you're doing.
I like the interchanging because I also like, in my own experience, I like the interchanging. So,
Yes.
I don't know. Anywho, let me open. I will be using my phone for my notes. So, be prepared for a few pauses, maybe. So, today I will be talking not necessarily about this album, but I'm using this album to bring a discussion to another point, to piggyback, to springboard, if you will, into the subject of the loss of faith as a heartbreak.
Oh, I love that.
Yes, because what I love about this album, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but it's about a lot of things. So one of the themes is about her losing her faith in God and her religion, but it's a breakup album.
I love. Okay, so
You
that's
know?
kind of like the central like metaphor.
Yes.
Or kind of not even just
She says that it's about God or an ex-lover.
Oh, I love it because it's like it can be read either way.
Yes.
Okay, and in doing so, you draw comparisons and contrasts between the two. In literature studies, we would say the central conceit of the album is I'm gonna learn y'all something today. No,
Sasha Velour. This has been a Sasha Velour moment.
Sasha Velour moment. I shaved my head bald again. What? I was never bald. I don't know what you're talking about. So this is a breakup album about losing your faith?
Yeah.
Okay,
basically.
right off the bat, not to jump the gun or anything, but I'm already like really resonating with that.
Exactly.
Because I think that was the greatest heartbreak of my life.
Yes, for sure. And especially for someone who at that point in my life is had never really experienced, like I had BPD, so I had a favorite person before, but I had never really had that sort of relationship that led to a great heartbreak. And so it only took me having experienced heartbreak to be like, I know this feeling.
Yes.
And it's the same feeling of like whenever you lose, like we talked about last week, whenever you lose sense of that thing that used to be called God and there's that hole there.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, I'm missing something. You're grieving.
There's that quote, I don't know who, maybe it's C.S. Lewis, I think, but I can't remember for sure, that it's like part of grieving, it's something to the effect of the worst part about losing someone is that you will forever lose the person you were when you were with them. And I think that's a big part of heartbreak, of like losing a lover or losing a friend or someone like passing on, but also like losing your relationship to God. You will never be able to be the person that you were when you believed.
Yes, that person, like
that person had security.
That was the death of Kayla Suzanne.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
bitch.
So I will say, in talking about this album, Julian Baker has talked about since reflecting on this album, she has said it sort of has this false sense of hope that she thought she had to have in music because she wasn't quite comfortable with just being sad yet. She was always like, in order for music to be successful, it has to have this air of hope. And so that's one of the regrets she has. Is like she wished she would just like lean in more into the angst of it all.
She met Phoebe Bridgers and she was like, "Oh, word, this is an option."
Well, see, they actually said that they learned that from her.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Specifically Lucy Dacus, who may or may not be in a relationship with Julian Baker.
Girl.
Their Pete and Ariana Halloween costume. It took me so long to be like, oh my God, that's Julian.
That's Julian, bitch. Julian was fucking serving. First of all, and there's nothing I love more than when a butch dresses up as like high femme.
Drag.
Because, Mama, it's drag. It's drag. I love that so much. That's so cute.
And so... like I said, she sort of says this about an album that is written to God or an ex-lover.
Yes.
And you can kind of see that there's certain ones that are definitively probably one or the other, but they can all sort of be used in a way to be about the same, like, you know, like some lean more towards this is definitely about God, some lean more like this is definitely about an ex-lover, but if you can make that jump, it's very easy to like interchange the two regardless.
For sure.
That sparked a lovely realization in me. That phrase about it's for God or next lover, that I had never really been able to put it so plainly. And that is like losing your religion or rebuilding your idea of the God that you grew up knowing can absolutely feel heartbreaking, especially for people who that was their whole world.
Yes.
It is very like world shattering because like instantly everything you knew is like up for grabs of whether or not you can like believe it.
Absolutely. I talk about this a lot with my friends. I feel like you included, in that people who
we're friends.
What? I haven't told you this before, but I really consider you like a close acquaintance.
Word.
Truly.
And I feel I guess the same.
I feel lukewarm about you too. I deconstruction, gender transition, all of these major states of transition, I would say, really do the same thing to your brain, which is that, and I draw the line between deconstruction and transition a lot, that if you go from one side of something to a total paradigm shift to the complete other side, it doesn't only teach you what things look like from both sides, it teaches you the fact that everyone sees things from these deeply different and entrenched perspectives. And it allows you to trace the contours of those perspectives in other people's ideology much more easily, and in your own.
Which makes it even more frustrating when you think about the fact like that you know these people who think like this, and you know good and well that there is nothing that you can do to make them see things like from the other, like from another way, because that you can't unless you like have that paradigm shift.
Exactly.
So, and also for people specifically who were like very lonely and felt like if they had nothing else, they did have God.
Yes.
Because like there'd be so many moments where you would feel so alone, be like, oh, at least I have peace that God is here with me in this moment. And then suddenly it was like, oh, I was alone the whole time.
That is Jesus, if you're there, why do I feel alone in this room? Ethel Kane, take me home.
The album, in very plain terms, shows the deterioration of a relationship between Julian and the intended audience, or the muse of this album, I would say. And it's brought on by being in the lowest point of your life. Whenever Julian wrote this album, I don't know if you know the Julian Baker lore.
Enlighten me.
So, the best way that you can describe the Julian Baker lore is listening to the song Graceland 2 by Phoebe Bridgers or Stay by Lucy Dacus. Those were both written for Julian, about Julian, because Julian has always had a struggled with addiction, struggled with mental health problems, and there was a point in time where she went to rehab, and that is what the song, whenever she left rehab, that is what Graceland 2 is about. And so a lot of her stuff are from that.
I do know about the boy genius trinity.
Yes.
That is, yeah.
And we were talking about earlier, I am sort of like if Julian and Lucy Dacus had a baby, and you were more of Phoebe and Lucy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. We are, Phoebe, Lucy is our shared mother, in that I think she is both a, like, funny, sad girl who feels unlovable and yet is intellectually and emotionally leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else.
Cerebral.
You called me cerebral. I didn't know what it meant. Yeah, exactly.
And now I do. Would it have killed you to call me pretty
exactly.
instead?
That she's a poet and all these things. However, I think you're Julian because... Do you want to explain why you're Julian also?
I think I'm Julian because just sort of like the little guy aspect of it emotionally.
You're just a little guy.
I'm just a little guy, even though I am like 5'8" and just look like an average sized woman. I'm really just a little guy.
You're just a little guy. And I am also Phoebe because I am sad and have a history of incredibly turbulent relationships.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And I'm a natural blonde.
And so whenever I'm a natural.
Oh, that caught up to you? Yeah, the stoner loading.
That really is what it is. And sometimes I'm so far beyond it that I can't go back. And I'm like, I have to commit.
The train going forward.
And so whenever, another interesting thing is some of the lines, because what I'll be doing today, might as well tell you, like, oopsie, what I'm doing today is I will be reading certain passages from the album Turn Out the Lights, which came out in 2017.
Yes.
And I will be just sort of throwing them out there for discussion. We might spend more time on some than others. There's really no structure.
Okay, no, I love that.
Because my last topic I did a lot of research on, and then my next topic I'll be doing a lot of research on. And so I was like, let's just Stick around.
You know, I never talk about this, but I have a degree in English. And so I love literally just close reading texts. Just, you know, I will only be doing a once over, and this is the first time I'm reading or remembering a lot of this stuff.
Right.
But I would love to hear your interpretation and commentary on this, and I would love to just experience it from your perspective also.
So I'll be reading through it like poetry and just putting in my own 2 cents, and anything that... There's a lot of things have double meanings because, again, it can be taken multiple different ways intentionally.
Yeah.
And I think I think it might have been that CGDX video, but that art's meaning comes from both the artist's intent and the interpretation of the audience. And that is what makes the meaning. You know what? If we ever have enough subscribers, we're gonna have to launch a Patreon, not just because we want money, but because we need an excuse to talk about non-specifically Christian shit. Because, girl, I want to talk about art. I want to talk about interpretation. I want to talk about aesthetic philosophy. We got to get into it. But before we get into that, let's get into this. Exactly. And so, one specific parallel I'll make is the idea of addiction. In my brain, I have decided that for a long time, I was addicted to the idea of God.
I mean
that as though, like, that was always my fallback, and I always had that to, like, lean on or rely on instead of dealing with my problems.
Well, in mental health, like, we often talk about addiction not just as a physiological experience, but as also a framework. So if any kind of maladaptive behavior or belief or impulse or whatever is something that you use to kind of, like, self-soothe, regulate emotions, or you return to because it's familiar or it brings you pleasure or whatever, but it's, like, quote unquote bad for you, discussing it as an addiction and using, like, harm reduction and other, like, addiction treatment methods can often be useful regardless of whether or not it's, like, literal drugs or not.
Yeah, I think that actually can be summed up by a lyric I'll talk about, which is one of the lines, I don't remember which song, it says, "I miss you the way that I miss nicotine. If it makes me feel better, how bad can it be?"
Oh, bitch.
Yeah.
No, literally. As Ethel Cain once said, if it feels good, it can't be bad.
They also both have, Ethel Cain has televangelism, and this album has televangelist.
Oh? The parallels.
Honestly, kind of. They're kind. Maybe there is a. I think Ethel would be Manic Pixie Dream Girl, and Julian would be. They're like the Manic Pixie Virgin Dream Girl and Butch Lesbian of the same person.
Oh, exactly. T-girls are almost always Manic Pixie, unfortunately.
That's the curse.
That's the curse.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started.
Please.
So the album begins with the song Overture, which is exactly that. There's no words to it. It's just sort of she sort of describes it as a thematic representation of what the album will be about. So it's like full of despair, but there's also at the end sort of like glimmers of hope.
Okay.
Which again is something that she said that she regrets about the album, is like she had too much hope.
She's like, well, my main regret about the album is that it wasn't totally suicidal, and that really doesn't vibe with me now.
That doesn't resonate with my spirit anymore.
Yeah.
And then the next song is called Appointments, and the song describes a breakdown of relationships, either due to mental health or drug addiction. Mm-hmm. And the first little passage I want to read...
Which is not something that we can relate to whatsoever.
No.
Yeah, never happened to us, but we'll do our best to empathize.
Y'all stay safe, though.
Yeah.
And so the first one I want to talk about is, I know that I'm not what you wanted, am I? Wanted someone who I used to be like. Now you think I'm not trying. Don't argue. It's not worth the effort to lie. And I want to talk about that as if you're talking to God.
I want to talk about that as if it's an ex-lover. I want to talk about it as both. Bitch, mama, this song contains multitudes.
Yes. The album contains multitudes.
Bitch, okay. First of all, I'm obviously struck by, in reference to what we said earlier, what does it say about who I used to be?
Oh, yeah.
I know that I'm not what you wanted. Am I wanted someone who I used to be like?
That
part. That's very, like, the person I used to be. I noticed in my deconstruction, my first, like, 2 years, I think, were marked by a deep jealousy and regret of wishing, like, being jealous of the person that I used to be.
That I could have just been that person.
Yes, not like thinking of like, oh my God, I miss the person who I was when I at least, even if I was in anguish because I was outside of God's grace, I believed that it was possible to one day be in it.
That hope that is there.
And like, I know, like, God, I know that you wanted me to be the person I used to be, the person who actually believed in you, but like, I can't be. Like, I'm not here for you anymore.
And I know that, like, if this is who I am, then you don't want me.
Exactly.
You've said it very plainly that you don't want someone like me.
I also think, as someone, I know that this is about both addiction and mental health. I know that we've had varying degrees of struggle with both. I will say, like, I have in the past struggled a lot with mental health in the way that it affects, like, relationships, whether it be like romantic or like platonic relationships.
Yeah.
I have also, especially like for 2 years in the middle of college, struggled a lot with drug dependency and addiction. And that really messed with some of my relationships at the time. And that also deeply resonates with like that situation, because when you go down that path of self-destructing, whether that be through like being cruel to people that you love, whether that be through, you know, going on a bender, shit like that, then you hate yourself more than anyone else can hate you. And all you want is almost for them to vindicate that feeling.
Yes, for them to admit, okay, in Desperate Housewives.
Okay.
there is an arc where one of the main characters, her son, is gay and ends up sleeping with her boyfriend as a way to get back at her.
Okay, wait, that's kind of cunt.
Yes.
That's kind of cunt.
But that is the drawing, because like Brie had really been trying to become a better mother, but that is where she draws the line, where she's like, I don't know what else to do. It's clear you don't want to be here. So she goes and like gives them enough money for like to get an apartment, and is like, I don't know what to do. And he finally says, I knew it. I knew one day you'd stop loving me.
Oh.
And that's sort of what that gives to me, is like, I want them to say it, to be like, I knew it. I knew one day.
Exactly. Girls, when they're a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The idea, oh my God, self-fulfilled prophecy.
Girl.
Marina and the Diamonds, oh no. I am not coming, my own self-fulfilled.
Marina and the Diamonds, period. Andy, I know you're listening. Like, I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
Girl. So yeah, I'm already starting to see that dichotomy, specifically in that excerpt.
And sort of leads into the next part where she says, I think if I ruin this, that I know I can live with it. Nothing turns out like I pictured it. Maybe the emptiness is just a lesson in canvases. Think if I fall again that I'll know you're still listening. And maybe it's all going to turn out right, and I know that it's not, but I have to believe that it is. And so I'm going to talk about that part about God.
Please.
Because there was always that idea in my head, knowing that, you know, if everything goes to shit, I can always go back to being a Christian. I can always go back to God. If my life falls apart, I know that I can go back there.
I think we discussed this, either last week or the week before, but that like in the early stages of deconstruction, and also, part of it was that you at first have this belief in the back of your head, like, I think eventually I'm going to get back there. I just need to develop my own relationship with it. I just need to like blah, 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 blah. It always feels like this safety net or this
Which
thing.
is like an addiction.
Exactly.
Like, I know that like if I'm in my lowest point, that's where I can turn to.
Exactly. And it's in my lowest points, when I've been the most vulnerable, when I've had my support system taken away in some way, that I have considered like, you know what? Maybe I should start going to church again.
And like the last two lines where it says, and maybe it's all going to turn out right, and I know that it's not, but I have to believe that it is. Like, knowing now, if I go back to religion because of who I am now, I know that I'm never going to truly believe it. And I know that it's not going to fix everything, but if I have to like trust that, I have to believe that it will, or that will no longer be there for me to go back to.
Yes.
And once you like finally go to that point of no return, and that's not there anymore, you're like, oh, what am I going to do if everything goes wrong? What am I going to turn to? What's going to be my crutch?
She references the emptiness and the blankness of it, which is what we're talking about, that pit. I think that the line talking about it as a lesson in blank canvases, though, maybe that's a bit of that hope glimmering through that she now regrets. Because even if she regrets it, I do think that is beautiful, because we say that the hole left by deconstruction feels like a hole because it's something that was never supposed to be filled in the first place. But I think that is an optimistic way to look at it. Like, this emptiness is nothing more than a blank canvas.
And like, it's something for me to like take that emptiness and make it into my own thing.
The thing is, you were taught to believe that there was this specific thing that has all of this power in your life, and then you figured out that it's not real and it isn't actually there. And then the next trick is learning in deconstruction that power still exists, but you get to choose what has that power.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
So the next song is the namesake of the album, Turn Out the Lights. And it is about coming to terms with that idea, like we were just talking about, of who do you turn to whenever like there's no one else there. When you turn out the lights, like coming to terms that is just you. Like at the end of the day, it is just you with yourself. There's no one there with you.
So Turn Out the Lights isn't about when it's like 9 p.m. and your stubble is starting to show a little bit and you go over to the person's house, but you're like, I don't want them to see all this when they're fucking me.
Strangely enough, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I feel less represented now.
So the first part I want to talk about is say you wish you could find some way to help, not be so hard on myself. So why is it easy for everyone else? And we talked about this when we talked about rapture anxiety and religious guilt, is the idea of why is it so easy for everyone else to have this peace, and like how is it easier for everyone else not to be plagued with this doubt, and to especially like the idea of like depression, because that is now such of like Christianity wants to say like just don't be depressed, God loves you.
Not only that, it moralizes like depression itself, because it's like growing up I always heard that like if you are depressed and anxious or whatever, it's because you aren't trusting in God. That it's like this intellectual, that it is a deficiency of the soul.
Right.
That if you are experiencing symptoms of mental illness, it is because you are not fully putting your mental health and your like intellectual sense of self all in God. So it's like, then that moralizes it of, well, if you're depressed, then that's because you're a bad person.
Yeah.
And so then you should feel ashamed of that, the experience.
And the like praying to God saying, okay, God, obviously it is not easy for me to like have this trust in you. There is something within me I need to fix. Will you show me what I need to fix inside myself so that I can be like, so it can be easy for me to let go of to cast all my cares upon you?
Yes. Girl. This is definitely one of those episodes where it's just us doing like therapy with each other. Like, wasn't that shit that we used to believe crazy? It was crazy.
And also, as I'm getting here, I think that we might have to do the first ever 2-parter.
Oh?
Because there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about, and I think there's a lot of discussion to be had, and I want to make sure that we have time for all of it.
I would love that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Trust and believe there will be more VeggieTales and Ethel Kane episodes.
Yeah. Well, I think that I'm going to do like this one back to back.
Okay. I love that.
Give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want.
Which is a literature analysis of Julian Baker.
With us dressed up as hot lesbians.
Exactly.
Okay. Can I address the rumors? I have recently been accused of being one of those bi girls that only dates men, but is like, oh, I'm bi. For the record, I have gone on dates with multiple women over the last year. They just all turned out to be fucking crazy. Bitches be crazy. Men are easier to manipulate. Men are easier to deal with because they're stupid. So if you think I look like a beautiful militant dyke right now and you want to hit me up, girl. This has been a PSA.
And there you have it, folks.
There you have it. Continue with your literary analysis.
The next phrase, still from the same song, Turn Out the Lights, is, and this is a little trigger warning, suicidal ideation. Or content warning, not trigger warning, because trigger warning implies that it's your fault.
Are you triggered, liberal?
No, it is just a content warning. And I'd never do it, but it's not a joke. I can't tell the difference when I'm all alone. Is it real or a dream? Which one is worse? Can you help me? I just wanted to go to sleep.
So you remember like 4 episodes ago when you were like, I wish I could go to sleep forever. And I was like, so funny thing, that's one of the screening questions that they ask you for suicidality.
And that's whenever I decided that, maybe medication is the right move.
Yes,
and
well,
folks, it's working.
It's working. A round of applause. Snaps for that. The only reason I exist in your life is to pressure you into taking pharmaceuticals, whether that be recreationally or...
Who's to say?
I think that's a beautiful, like, way to dwell in that agony.
And it's like just being in this stage, this like sort of blinding phase of where you almost feel like you've already done it, you know? And, oh, hello. And not being able to tell what the feelings you were having, whether, for me, the saying it's real or is it a dream, is not being able to tell if the feelings I am having are from God or are thoughts I am having, and just being able to differentiate, you know, the different parts of myself. But I didn't know there were parts of myself.
Yes.
So I felt like it was, you know, God and demons fighting inside of me.
Damn,
And my
bitch.
dad thought that too.
Yeah. Your dad trying to cast the demon out of you. Meanwhile, it's just like, well, this is a specific like subset of your psyche that was developed through these sets of traumas. And your dad's like, no trauma, demons. Demons. I didn't do anything wrong. It's devil. That's very. I also think that like this is it real or is it a dream? Like, I know it's not a joke, but like also, from a relationship standpoint, not just like a God standpoint, that for people who have dealt with suicidality and also addiction, I think that is like a very common experience of these moments or these almost periods of your life where you're deeply dissociated almost.
Yeah.
And like this like flippant disregard for your own safety, even though you know that self-hatred and disregard for your own well-being hurts the people that you love. And this almost like total detachment.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes. It's just so dense.
It's so dense. A dense text.
Dense text. See, and like this is actually, yes, dissecting the entire album basically. So
Yes.
that's why it's a little longer. The next song on the record/album is Shadowboxing. When you're shadowboxing, you're, you know, like punching the air. And so she's talking about like the first lines, one of the first lines says, when you watch me throwing punches at the devil, it just looks like I'm fighting with me.
Ooh. Okay.
Girl.
Okay, Miss Julian Baker.
Yeah, so demons in this aspect sort of represent addiction and mental health battles. And especially because in religion, those are classified with demons that you have to fight.
Yes.
In your life. It literally sets it up to be like, we all have spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare, bitch.
Me punching at this is spiritual warfare.
Why I oughta. And it's just depression.
Exactly.
It's a benzo's addiction. You know what? Shout out to Eden, sophomore year of college. You know what? She was skinny. She was addicted to pharmaceuticals. And she had a dream. I'm so glad that she didn't realize that dream, but she had one.
So the first thing I want to say, shadow boxing with giants that grew from our feet, because it's you. It's alluding to the fact that it's yourself. Know that you don't understand because you don't believe what you don't see. You watch me throwing punches at the devil, and it looks like I'm just fighting with me. And that I think that specific line is talking to the other people in her life who love her, that see her having these struggles, and it looks like she is having these issues with herself. It's sort of like victim blaming of like addiction and mental health problems, is seeing as a problem someone has with themselves. And so like, oh, she's just battling, you know, herself. There's like a war with inside of her. But no, mental health and addiction are actual things that people have to deal with. And it's not necessarily a part of who they are, but rather something that is like hindering them in a way, I guess.
Absolutely. See, I struggle with this a lot, both in like spiritual and religious like allegory of this album, and also in the relationship allegory of this album, in that I want to say like, no, I am not bipolar, I have bipolar. Like, I am not BPD, I have BPD.
The BPD is
yeah.
because it
things
affects
like
so
that.
much.
Exactly. But then I'm also like, okay, I resent that impulse a little bit of like, no, the thing that I am exists entirely separately of these, and I am plagued by that. It's like, no, part of who I am is like a person that deals with these symptoms and effects and consequences of having these mental illnesses that are specifically probably like genetic and trauma based, you know? And it's like, I don't know whether it's better to split myself into those like subsections or to take myself all together. And I think that in this, it's kind of highlighting almost the agony that comes from people people, not only is all of that not understood by other people, but it's all flattened. You can't even have that nuance of a discussion about mental health or addiction with people who don't experience it that way, because the best you can do is plead with them to see that, like, it's not me.
It's like
It's not who I am.
Daddy, I don't have demons in me.
Daddy, Mama, I was born this way. Ooh, there ain't no other way. Mama, that's like, it's this simplification of like, these are demons. This is like something that I am dealing with. To you, it looks like it's just me and I'm fighting with myself, but it's something on the outside. And I think that is like, I would say that the voice of that in this album almost like emphasizes the fact that you are speaking from the experience of an addict or someone who struggles with mental health or a sinner to someone who fundamentally does not share that experience.
Yeah.
To God, to a lover who like doesn't feel like that way, things like that.
Yeah. Damn, girl.
Damn, girl. You be rambling, girl.
And no, I just think it's interesting because, like, the way that I strongly resonate with this as the recipient of this album being God, which where I think you were bringing you were showing me interesting perspective to where if you do see it as the idea of an ex-lover. Cool.
So like, I had a breakup recently.
Girls when they have a breakup recently.
Girls when they had a breakup.
So the next part is, but there's comfort in failure, singing too loud in church, screaming my fears into speakers till I collapse or burst, whichever comes first.
Oh.
And as a former worship leader, you best believe that I had my Rachel Berry moment where whatever was on my heart, those were the worship songs we were singing that night.
Absolutely.
And did we sing Oceans a lot? Yeah, we did. Because you just
beyond borders. Girl, the power that Oceans held over any Christian child that grew up in the 2010s, Mama, waterworks.
Every time I didn't get something I wanted, it was "Thy will be done."
The drama.
Had things to say.
The drama and conflama of it all.
But there was, especially whenever we would go to these. I know this was a unique experience to me because your dad didn't believe in those things. But whenever we would go to worship conferences, we went to a big one in Gatlinburg every like New Year's.
Okay.
And just think about screaming lyrics to the worship song that just hits you in the spirit, and like you're like, "Oh, Father," and you have the hands in the air. Whenever you have had those moments, I mean, again, it is just feeling emotions in live music.
That I was about to say that tweet.
But whenever you're in the image, whenever you haven't figured that out yet,
yes.
You're like, there was nothing like just being so vulnerable in that moment.
Nothing like it.
Nothing like it.
Nothing like it. I'll tell you what. That fucking TikTok of that girl who's like, when I was a kid and I cried like at these Christian like music concerts, I thought it was feeling the Holy Spirit. Then I realized that I just like live music.
Because so real.
So real.
Anyway. Next line is the chorus. I know you were trying to help, but you're only making it worse. You tell me that I shouldn't blame myself, but you can't imagine how badly it hurts just to think sometimes. And that's how I think almost all of the time. And that's it. That is a really beautiful musical moment as well.
Yeah.
And that is another thing that plagued me, was the fact that I know that God's grace is supposed to be a comforting thing, and she talks about it a lot in her music, but to me it always felt like this enormous burden, and like something that was being like something being dangled over my head almost.
Yeah, like well, I think that when you're told like you are a sinner who doesn't deserve it, blah 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 blah, and yet like God chooses to give you his grace anyways.
It's like it's almost like you despise, like I don't want it.
Exactly. Because when you're told that you are a sinner who doesn't deserve it, but you should be so thankful and beautiful that you're given it anyways, but you fundamentally you feel that that's wrong, then it just makes you feel more guilty. You're like, no, fuck that. I don't want to have to feel like this wretch that's like accepting it, because I don't even know if I believe it in the first place.
Yeah.
So I can't just hold it. I can't accept that and feel humbled before it, because that would only make me feel even more like a fraud.
And it's almost that idea that we were talking about is And she talks about this later, is you want to have that moment where saying, aha, I knew you would never love me. And in one of her later songs, she says, I want to say something that will make you hate me. And almost like wanting, you get to a point in that where you want God to hate you.
Girl.
So you no longer have to like feel the burden of trying to measure up because you've already ruined the chances for yourself.
Make
yourself irredeemable. Make yourself the one person that God's like gives up on.
If you ever, if you ever want to make sure that you don't go back to Christianity, become transsexual. Alter your body in ways that will prevent you from ever believing in the one true God. That's my advice to y'all.
And also the line, you can't imagine how badly it hurts just to think sometimes. God the Father could never understand.
God the Father couldn't. Jesus, I know
Maybe.
he could. I know he could.
But God the Father understand?
Fathers understanding? Something's not right here.
No.
Mama, the idea that like it's just so painful to think sometimes, when you take that as a line written to either an ex-lover that you feel like you are doing wrong or not good enough for, or for God after you've like lost your faith, I think the core of that line and that emotion is the idea that, again, they cannot relate to what it's like to be you, but also just that the life that you are living, the like brain that you have, in this case, one that was given to you and created by God, or like one that is constructed by the person that you love, is not something that you can bear. And so for like God, that's almost like saying like, sorry, I can't do it. You know, you gave this to me. What the fuck am I supposed to do?
Yeah,
and
take it back.
Exactly. And to an ex-lover, it's like, sorry, like I know you're doing everything right. I sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah, that's what's, especially as people, two bitches with weird, anxious attachment.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Or just like having experience with like favorite persons or like obsessions with people.
About.
Whatever. They could be
you.
doing everything right.
Yes.
And which you're just like, and it's literally not you, it's me, and it's just like, what is wrong with me that I can't just make this work?
The worst part about BPD specifically, but also just being a traumatized bitch in general, is the fucking guilt that comes along with engaging in those destructive and harmful like patterns of thought and also behaviors. Because it's not just like, oh, I'm being way too uptight about this when I know I shouldn't be, or oh, I'm stressing them out by being anxious and asking for reassurance in this way over and over again. It's like, I wish I wasn't fucking like that. I'm a bad person for doing that. And then that like causes even more distress that their partner has to make up for. If you've ever dated me, I'm so sorry. There are like two of y'all. Like,
And
I'm so sorry.
And that just made me think of another like way that I can relate that to the idea of God as a ex-lover, or even just lovers in general. In relationships, I'd like you were saying, I tend to need always that assurance that they still love me. That is the parallel to when I was a Christian, me constantly praying that prayer of salvation, like we talked about, me constantly like yearning for salvation. That is what I'm doing in relationships. I'm constantly asking for salvation.
Oh my God. Wait a minute. Let me take a sip of this water.
Divine revelations on the
Divine
podcast.
revelations. You just reframed some shit for me.
I know. As I was saying it, I was like, "What? Whoa!
Wait a
Back,
minute.
you can't put it back in after you say it."
Oh my God.
Now you have to think. Now we have to think about some things.
Fuck, I don't want to. No, yeah, that constant need for reassurance, that almost like we talked last week about how religious guilt manifests in many ways as OCD, of an obsession that comes along with this compulsion. Those do resemble each other very similarly, and not only that, they feel the same.
And especially for bitches with BPD, because I think for a long time God was my favorite person.
Yes.
Which is insane because again, that was in here. That was somewhere in there.
Bitch, yes. It's almost because, okay, speaking of frameworks, we were talking about mental illness.
Because never felt good enough.
Literally. Speaking of frameworks, I think the favorite person framework is a great thing to borrow from BPD.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, if you don't have BPD, if you have, like, just regular trauma, or if you're, like, getting out of religious indoctrination, whatever. For those of you who don't know, BPD is borderline personality disorder. Both Kale and I have been diagnosed with BPD. while like internet discourse would have you believe it means crazy bitch syndrome or like you're a bad person or
Beautiful
whatever.
princess disorder.
Yeah. Basically, what it means is that Kayla and I both struggle with very extreme and intense emotions and an unstable or split sense of self. Which means we often seek out like our sense of self from other people. And when that becomes too strong and toxic of a dependence on someone else for our sense of self and our self-esteem, that person is our favorite person. It's like, you know how when you date somebody or your best friend, you almost feel like you feel really bad about yourself if that person isn't making you feel good, or you feel like you're on top of the world if they are making you feel good. It's like the most extreme version of that. So when we say, like, Jesus is almost like serving as your favorite person, you may take that, and we may take that to mean using that framework. It's like Christianity encourages you to place your entire sense of self
and worth
on this one person, on this one entity who has a very strict moral code, who has a very high standard. So it's almost ensuring that every ounce of you should be dependent on something that is inherently going to make you feel like shit.
You want to go to church real quick?
I would love to.
There is a pastor who I used to love, especially in my later years of Christianity, Timothy Keller. He
Timothy
died
Keller.
either this year or last year. He died recently.
R.I.P. Timothy.
And in one of his favorite sermons he had that at one point gave me peace, but now I look back with sort of a cynicism, is he talked about how the reason that everyone is so broken and empty is because they place their entire sense of worth on other things, like on people, on jobs, on careers, and those are all things that are not stable and can one day be gone. But the one thing that you can place your whole identity and self on and rest assured that it will always be there is God. And to that I say, false. Because
actually,
that feeling you're talking about that he used to describe how it feels whenever you lose that thing that you put your whole sense of identity on. Yeah, I did what you said, and I still had the same outcome.
Exactly. My dad used to say something similar. He would give this sermon and repeated in various different ways that says you cannot have Christ and, or you cannot have faith and. It can't be like my happiness and my joy, my sense of self comes from Christ and my career, or Christ and my spouse, or Christ and my like art. It has to just be Christ first. Foremost.
I made it only Christ,
and it didn't work out.
And what did I have whenever I lost that? Nothing.
I think that when people talk about religion being a crutch, that's what we're talking about. In that it is what. Listen, we get it. It is. Let me just say this: being a human sucks.
Yeah.
The inherent suffering that comes with desire sucks. But just because it would be nice in theory to have an all-powerful and all-loving, all-present person, entity, Father, God, to take that place for you, to never waver, to offer you that thing that you're never going to find in reality, doesn't mean it's real. It just means that is an ideal that we all strive for, that we're never going to achieve, but you need to find ways to find beauty and love in those imperfections, not creating it for yourself.
Interesting. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you, snobs.
I think I'm going to finish up this song, and then we will close up this episode and pick up with the next song next time. The last part is, I'm going to split this up, is even you couldn't manage to pull the fuse from the back of my head. Pause.
Oh.
Even God could not save me from those moments where I didn't want to be alive anymore, when I was calling out into the darkness, crying for something to make me feel better. Even God couldn't be the thing that was like, hey, don't do it for me. Baby girl, stop for me.
Stop for me. No, yeah, but on that,
even
baby
God
girl,
couldn't
stop
do
for
it.
me. Even God couldn't do it. Even a perfect lover, partner, like having to explain to them, like, your love is perfect, but
you can't help, you can't save me.
It's not enough. Like, it's not gonna pull the fuse from my head, which implies like my head is a bomb. I was just made for blowing myself up, and there's nothing that you can do to stop me from doing what I feel like I was designed to do.
Right. And along those lines, the next part, and again, emphasizing the connection between God, our next lover, when you tell me you love me, I wanted so bad to believe it. So tell me you love me, I wanted so bad to believe you. Ladies and gentlemen, Julian Baker.
Well,
Ladies and gentlemen, and brothers and sisters in Christ.
brothers and sisters and sisters. You're bringing it back.
Julian Baker.
Julian Baker. It's like the sisters sweatshirt from James Charles, but sisters.
Sisters.
Okay, first of all, for writing those lines right there, Julian Baker, fuck you. How dare you? But yeah.
It's like saying, whenever you tell me these things, I don't believe you, but please tell me because I want to believe you.
Mm-hmm.
Being like, no matter what you do, I'm not going to believe you, but still do it because I want to so bad. Constantly needing that salvation from God or that person.
No matter how much you tell me you love me, I'll still believe that deep down you don't and you're going to leave me. But I need you to keep saying it, please. No matter how many times you say I'm beautiful, I don't believe it. But I need you to say it so that I can believe it for that moment.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
that is a great place to end.
Okay.
So do you want to have a sentence or two takeaway from what we've gotten so far?
I think it may be our own bias, but this is a BPD album, BPD anthems for real. I think that the line drawn between your deconstruction and looking back on an ex-lover is a powerful way to draw like the detriments and the destructive patterns of thinking from both. Because when you leave God, who is literally designed as like a perfect figure or whatever, then it makes you feel terrible about yourself. But that also allows you to deconstruct the systems of belief that made you feel terrible about yourself in comparison to them. Same thing with a breakup. Like, even if you feel like they were perfect, they didn't do anything wrong, like they loved you, they provided you everything, but you just weren't enough and you were bad. It's like, okay, but that feeling can lead you to, in a healthy way, deconstruct the traumas, the patterns of thinking, the things,
that blank canvas.
Yeah. That led you to believe and feel that way in the breakup, and also to engage in those behaviors during the relationship. Yeah. So I think that that's a powerful way to look at both.
So, Sister Eden.
Yeah.
On that note, do you have a verse of the day for us?
Boy, do I. All right, Sister Kale. So today, my verse of the day is Genesis 3:7. Now, I know we're all pretty familiar with the early chapters of Genesis, but I think this is a very particular important verse. This is after they have eaten of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And then it says that then the eyes of both of them were opened and they knew they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. Now, there's a lot to unpack here in terms of like the meaning of knowledge of good and evil, like allegorically, of like nakedness and of creating clothing and tools. I just brought it up because I wanted to ask, when is Schiaparelli going to release a loincloth line from fig leaves?
Well, you know that the reason I think that myth came to existence is because fig leaves look like a dick and balls.
A dick and balls, mama. A dick and balls. The old saying, let's call a spade a spade.
And that's why they covered it.
That's why they covered it.
It was the perfect size to cover.
The old saying, let's call a spade comes from a previous saying, let's call a fig a fig.
A cunt.
A cunt is basically what that means.
Yeah, I thought that was the right.
Yeah. But then someone was like embarrassed to say that, so they're like, a spade or whatever. Girl, a fig leaf is basically saying cock and balls. Mama, they roped themselves in it. They said, we're going to cover ourselves. But you know what's down there.
It's there.
You know, girl.
Just a little visual comedy.
Just a little. Covering your body with a gold cast of your body. Schiaparelli, get on it. I want my creds.
That was the demon interrupt. That was Legion.
Not Legion. I demand you leave my friend Kale. Yeah, very that.
Hey, went me the first time. Didn't work then. Won't work now.
Having demons cast out of you is such a surreal experience because it's both like nonsensical and stupid, but also you want to give them what they want. So it's a little bit of like, like, do I exorcist? Like, there's no pea soup to vomit, so I don't know where to go with this.
I don't know. In the moment, I was just like, Dad?
Dad?
Do you think there's a demon in me?
Well, yes. Because you're gay.
Yeah, I'm just saying, no, I was just gay. But you know what? God is gay all the time.
And all the time, God is gay.
We'll see you real soon.
See you soon. Thank you all so much for listening to today's service. And as always, thank you to our music minister, Brother Sam, for creating that beautiful piece of music that is our intro and outro.
And if you are a visitor with us today, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button and rating us 5 stars wherever you're listening, and if you love the show next week when you come back, why don't you bring a friend?
And remember, God is gay all the time.
And all the time, God is gay.